swearing in. All right, who are we missing here? Commissioner Moody? Oh, there you are. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting, our last meeting of 2020. So we have a full agenda today. We also, just as a reminder, at the end of COW, I'll ask for a motion to go into executive session for a 2 p.m. executive session with our city manager. And then we have public safety at 3 p.m. And then we're back together again tonight. So I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And to get us started today, before we get to our action items, what I'd like to do is just turn it to our city manager momentarily to introduce our new communications director, Mr. David Green. So city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, commissioners. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge a new member of our team, as the Mayor indicated, David Green, who comes to us immediately from Austin, Texas, as the communications manager. And I had a chance to work with David extensively on several issues and seeing his work firsthand, and know that he will do a good job for us in Grand Rapids. He's handled everything for us in terms of crisis management, dealing with bombings, the major development, and rolling out good news, and as well as engaging the community in Austin. But has also had extensive experience prior to working here in Grand Rapids as a retired member of the U.S. Army and working in their public affairs efforts. And so we want to thank him for being part of our family and welcome him. I'd like to ask him to turn his camera on and say hello to the commission and public.
Thank you, Manager, and hello, Commission. First off, I'll just say from a personal standpoint, my wife and I are really looking forward to coming here. We're not from Michigan. We are coming from Texas, but we're not of Texas. My wife grew up just outside of Chicago. I graduated high school in Peoria, Illinois. This is in some ways a homecoming for us as we get back to Four Seasons and White Christmases and Midwest nice again coming out of Texas. So professionally, I really do look forward. I think there's an outstanding opportunity here and just so many great things going on in Grand Rapids, just so much we can do. And so over the next few weeks, I look forward to trying to connect with each of you and get a sense of where your priorities are, what you think our communications plan needs as we build that out and move forward. So I'm just very excited and thank you for the opportunity and look forward to serving the residents here in Grand Rapids as I have everywhere I've ever been.
Well, thank you, David. Welcome to Grand Rapids. I know we're all excited to get to know you and work with you, and we'll look forward to doing that in the next couple of weeks. So, all right, Commissioners, that will take us to our first item today. This is a resolution authorizing the adoption of the new fire department fee as allowed by Title IX Police Regulations, Chapter 159, Fire Prevention. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Our fire chief, Chief Lehman, is here. So Chief, good to see you. And I'll start before I hand this over to you to explain. I just want to say thanks for all your hard work. I know all of us appreciate the work that you do and the department is doing, especially during this really trying year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So before you today is a resolution that adopts a new fee for CPAT, or Candidate Physical Ability Testing. CPAT also aligns with our strategic goal to use evidence-based, data-driven methodologies to reduce barriers to employment and improve quality of hires, reducing turnover and increasing the workforce diversity to reflect the demographics of our community. So this exam has been legally validated. It also is agreed upon through the International Association of Firefighters and the Fire Chiefs. It was a collaborative effort to create a uniform test that's done nationally. We're bringing this to Grand Rapids in our hopes that we can run this test on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, allowing for more increase in the ability to get a diversified pool of candidates, but also allowing for a regional testing site for other departments to be able to utilize, and hopefully bringing us to a point where we can go to a cross-neutral testing environment while improving our ability to give this test. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioners, any questions or comments about this? Great step forward. All right, I'll go ahead and ask our city clerk to call the vote.
Commissioner Isasi.
Yes. Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. Thank you. All right, next is a resolution approving revisions to the millage investment guidelines. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. We have our Parks Director, David Marquardt here. I'll turn it to him to share with us some details about this, and then I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. City Manager David Marquardt, Director of Grand Rapids Parks and Recreation. I believe Mr. Kane or Mr. Canfield have a slide. There we go. Thank you. So this agenda item is being brought to you for two amendments that are being proposed for the millage investment guidelines that you all adopted 1 year ago in 2019. Just as a reminder, those millage investment guidelines have a few highlights that are shown here at the top of this slide. The first of which is investment categories. If you recall, the 2013 investment guidelines looked at percentages of investment. Those percentages have been removed as a part of the adopted millage guidelines, and instead we're committing to investing in these 4 different areas throughout the city. The guidelines do maintain the general operating fund support through the maintenance of effort. They do maintain a commitment to equity through all of the investments. And the millage investment guidelines did add one new component last year, which is a review of the guidelines every 5 years. For 2020, the proposed amendments, there are 2. The first of which is adding clarifying language based on input from Park Advisory Board members and from residents across the city, clarifying that millage funds are not necessarily to be prioritized for land acquisition, but rather that the department should pursue other sources of funding for land acquisition. However, the advisory board did wish to have some ability to utilize these funds should grant applications be awarded to the department for land acquisitions, and have some ability to utilize those funds for grant match. The second component that is proposed as an amendment to these 2019 guidelines is the maintenance of effort in the way in which it is calculated. The 2013 method of calculation is one that looks concurrently with the current budget year. The 2019 adopted millage guidelines was proposing to take a 1 year look back for budgeting purposes. And the intention there was to provide really a predictable benchmark for budget planning. What we have found over the course of the last year, however, is that we're not necessarily tracking with the way in which we thought that we might, that works well for the department and the finances. So this agenda item does add those 2 amendments that you see at the bottom of this slide, and I will take any questions that you might have with these amendments.
Thank you, David. David, I guess I have one question. I mean, I'm glad to see we made some changes to address the maintenance of effort and the calculation for that. But going back to what you said about land acquisition, I just want to be really clear that, especially being intricately involved in both millages, you know, I just want to be clear that the millage dollars can still be used for match funding for, let's say, hypothetically, an MD&R trust fund grant, or other grants for land acquisition, correct?
That is exactly correct, Mayor.
Okay. I think it's important. One of the things we continued to say during the millage process is that these dollars would allow us to leverage other dollars. And I just want to make sure that that's really clear. Obviously, we want to look for grant dollars first, but if that's not available, and use these dollars to match, but if that isn't available, we also want to have the funds available to meet our goals around adding green space, especially in our neighborhoods that are deplete green space in some of our forest neighborhoods.
Exactly correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, other questions about the guidelines? All right, I don't see any.
Sorry, Mayor, it's Commissioner Repart.
Yep,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say that I think these are are both really common sense adjustments to the guidelines, especially since 2020 is going to be an outlier year. So, to have a little bit of flexibility in terms of how we calculate that maintenance of effort is going to be really helpful. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, well said, Commissioner. And Commissioner, thanks for serving as liaison on the Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. All right, any final questions or thoughts? Okay, I'll turn to our city clerk to call for the vote.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Isasi,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. Thank you. All right, next that will take us to a resolution setting the dates for a public hearing and consideration of zoning ordinance text amendments affecting the traditional business area, or what we call TBA, and commercial zone districts. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. We have Ms. Turkelson here to talk to us about this. Just to tee it up though, commissioners, this is a conversation that we started having after the housing needs assessment, as well as some of the feedback that we've received over the years with the difficulty that many folks have had filling some of these spaces. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Turkelson.
Good morning, Commission. Thank you for your time. While Mr. Canfield puts up the presentation for me, I'm going to ask for a little bit of grace on my presentation. I'll go as quickly as possible, but it is important that we understand the rationale for today's proposed amendments. So over the past couple of years, the Planning Department has worked very closely with building owners, investors, and developers, and we've become keenly aware of how those interests of what their interests are and how those interests are aligning with the city's master plan. And importantly, how those interests are affected by the community's needs, market conditions, and code requirements. Next slide, please. Alignment between these elements is really critical for the community to realize its vision while providing for its needs. And it's important that we recognize when strategic adjustments are necessary to ensure that alignment. The impact of the current health crisis has created impacted the already challenged commercial market. And although demand for commercial space has lessened, the amount of available commercial space has not. So additionally, the need for housing units generally and affordable housing units specifically is well understood both anecdotally as well as through data. Unfortunately, there's a correlation between these two issues that serve as some of the justification for the proposed text amendments. Next slide. So the next two slides provide a very brief overview of the zone districts that are affected by the proposed amendments. The TBA, or the traditional business area or zone districts, is our pre-1945 city. It's designed to have a pedestrian scale, be very transit friendly, and have a greater mix of uses. So examples of our TBA streets include South Division, Granville, Leonard, and Wealthy Street. Next slide. The commercial zone district, or C district, spans our mid-century and modern era neighborhoods. The TBA and the C districts develop like concentric rings around our downtown. And so as we see in the mid-century and modern era neighborhoods, we see a greater reliance on the automobile, and we see larger scale development patterns happening. Examples of our commercial zone districts include Lake Michigan Drive and 28th Street. So the next slide provides a comparison between what we currently have in our zoning ordinance as well as what we are proposing today. So the proposed amendments will provide greater flexibility in the ground floor use requirements within our traditional business area and our commercial zone districts. The amendments would also eliminate the bonus height structure applicable to the TBA zone district, but it does not increase the overall allowable height. So currently in our TBA zone district for ground floor residential, it is not permitted in our TBA zone district unless a bonus is achieved. And that bonus is specific to affordable housing projects. In the commercial zone district, ground floor residential is currently not permitted either. Again, there are some exceptions relative to the affordable housing bonus, and then certain streets that resulted from largely from the Granville area specific plan. In the TBA zone district currently, office uses do require a special land use when on the ground floor. However, it is permitted in the C district, and we're not proposing any changes, of course, because it's already permitted. Next slide, please. So the proposed amendments, this provides a bit of a graphic depiction of what I just said. So within the TBA, as proposed, within the TBA and the commercial zone district, we would allow ground floor residential use as a permitted use or by right administrative review. Also within the TBA zone district, we would allow ground floor office uses as permitted uses when the building or the use does not front on a neighborhood business or urban center street. As you'll note in the ordinance packet, we also provided definitions of that, and that ties to our Vital Streets plan. But when you think of a neighborhood business street, think of Leonard Street, Wealthy Street, Bridge Street, etc. So that graphic depiction shows that in the red zone, when an office use is located in that front 20 feet, it would require a special land use. When it's on the back side of the building or greater than 20 feet away from the street, it would be permitted. So in some of our TBA zone districts, especially when you think of like South Division, some of our floor plates are quite large. And so it would allow for the backside of those floor plates to be office use by right, but maintaining that what we would consider a more active commercial frontage. Next slide. We're also proposing a change to the TBA height requirements. Again, this is only applicable to this zone district. We currently permit a maximum of 3 stories. However, we permit a 4th floor if bonuses are achieved. And those bonuses include mixed income housing, affordable housing, and urban open space. The proposed ordinance would eliminate that structure and allow for 4-story buildings by right. Next slide. So when we think about what that potential impact is, I realize that these overviews are a little bit hard to see, but on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see where the traditional business areas are located in the city, and that those are shown in red. On the right side, the map is showing where our commercial zone districts are located. So out of almost 6,000 commercially zoned parcels, 37% of those parcels, or 2,200 parcels, are zoned our traditional business area. 9%, or 550 parcels, are zoned commercial. So you can see that the proposed change would be fairly significant, or more significant, having a more significant impact in our TBA zone district. Next slide. So I've gone through the what's. What are we trying to do, or what are the proposed amendments? But I think it's really important that we understand the why. So I previously stated the importance of having alignment between our vision, our community needs, those market conditions, and our code requirements. And it's been my experience and my professional opinion that we do not have alignment right now, and we don't have the alignment that we're desiring. There are very specific factors that support the Planning Department's decision to prepare these amendments for consideration, and that includes our housing needs. The city is experiencing a significant shortage of affordable housing and housing supply. That was shown through our 2020 housing needs assessment, where it found that we need more than 5,300 additional rental units by 2025 and 3,500 additional home units for sale. In that report, it emphasized the relationship between inadequate housing supply and the increased lack of affordability, and allowing for residential use on the ground floor within our commercial or mixed-use zone districts was one of their recommendations. Allowing ground floor residential units and eliminating the height bonus structure within the TBA zone district will result in a 50% increase in floor area that can be used for new residential units. This is particularly significant given the previously stated housing need and the desire to pause housing density conversations within the residential zone districts until the master plan update. Accessibility requirements. Several of the construction codes require the addition of an elevator for a building to access residential units when there are no accessible units on the ground floor. If accessible units were allowed on the ground floor or available, then an elevator would not be required. Of course, high rises are exception, so in the TBA zone district, it would not be necessary. So the cost of adding an elevator is significant as it impacts both the feasibility of the project itself and the cost per unit. For market conditions, COVID-related impacts have placed an added strain on an already challenged retail market. So providing greater flexibility to the ground floor use requirements will provide building owners with the flexibility or the opportunity to activate vacant or underutilized floor area. Furthermore, additional residential units will increase the number of residents within a business district, and population density is critical to the success of a commercial business district. Regarding the bonus or the bonus height incentives applicable for the TBA, so those bonus heights were revised in 2015 as a result of the recommendations of GR Forward. So the intent was to incentivize developers to provide amenities that the city strongly desired that were not being routinely provided. The structure incentivized the development of urban open space, mixed income housing, affordable housing, and all in exchange for one additional story, excuse me. However, in working with the development community, we have witnessed applicability challenges with this revised structure. It has become apparent that it isn't practicable to provide 25% of the lot area for urban open space, given the typical lot sizes within our TBA district, and certainly not for one additional story. Nor is it every development able to support mixed income or affordable housing pricing models. So in short, with the current with the current height bonus structure, the ability to construct a 4-story building within the TBA zone district is practically infeasible, and it's a barrier to the city achieving other goals, including the reinvestment in our neighborhood business districts and the need for additional housing supply. Next slide. So there is past planning work that speaks to these very amendments. The 2002 master plan encouraged us to explore a core and connector approach to our commercial zone districts, and particularly in our TBA zone districts, concentrating on more intense activities or uses in the cores, and in the connectors allowing higher density residential. The Granville Area Specific Plan recommended changes to allow for ground floor office and residential. We recently implemented that. And more recently, the Southtown Business Area Specific Plan recommended a TBA and TBA transition zone, which recommended a greater variety of uses, including office and residential in certain circumstances. Next slide. So the the Planning Commission considered these amendments at their November 12th, 2020 public hearing and unanimously recommended approval to the City Commission. We did receive letter support, including a letter from the Chamber of Commerce. There was one business association that did oppose the amendment, citing inconsistencies with their 2012 area specific plan. So this item today would establish January 12th as a public hearing at City Commission, and January 26th is the date of the ordinance consideration. So in conclusion, the Planning Department and Planning Commission recommends these amendments to be made to support the continued vitality of our business areas. And I would expect that further discussion and perhaps even refinement would most certainly take place during the next master plan update. And with that, I am available for any questions.
Thank you. That is a very thorough presentation of what is before us today. And so I will turn it over to my colleagues to ask questions. Again, this is setting the public hearing for January 12th, which is our first meeting in next year. So Commissioner O'Connor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I'm really excited about these common sense changes that I think are going to have some real impacts in things moving forward.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Repper?
Yeah, I want to say the same thing. I'm happy that we're starting this conversation today. And I think that given the unprecedented nature of this year, giving people flexibility, as a lot more people are working from home, and as also, I really appreciated the slide on the why of the change. So much of the zoning stuff is technical and it's specific and it's about what we're doing, but I really appreciate those really strong reasons for why we would ask for these changes. So thanks for bringing it forward today.
All right, commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Lanier?
Thanks, Mayor. Kristen, great job on this presentation, very thorough. I have a couple questions. I know that during many of our housing discussions that we've had, we've talked about that the housing crisis that we're experiencing isn't unique to the city of Grand Rapids, but it's a regional issue. So I'm curious to know if we've begun to have any regional discussions about the housing needs across this region. The other question is, I'm curious to know why this is being done prior to the master plan. I don't know, I'm guessing that there's a good answer for that. I know that because it's a blanket change, I'm just more curious about that. Why now? And then I'm also curious to know how some of the elements of what's being proposed will impact these, what I would consider underdeveloped areas like 28th Street, Plainfield, Lake Michigan Drive, Alpine, you know, as I've been talking about for years. And considering that there are a number of people who may not understand zoning issues as well in neighborhoods, that it would be great if we had some incentives helping developers to see the benefit of developing on those lots that, quite frankly, need a lot of help right now on those streets that I just named. And then I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the business district that sent a letter of opposition because it was that they felt that it conflicted with their 2012 ASP. And so I know you did reference a couple other ASPs and how this fits with those. So I'm guessing that you've kind of looked at all of them to see if it fits or if it's in opposition or conflict with them. So just curious to know those things as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So in terms of regional housing, I wouldn't say that there's a regional housing approach from a zoning or land use perspective specifically. We do talk, and certainly the planning department at City of Grand Rapids has been strongly supportive of other communities taking a closer look at their housing policies. I think that there's maybe different levels of political support for density, for example, that varies by community. I believe Mr. Kilpatrick has been working maybe more intentionally about a regional approach and could probably better speak to that as to what is happening currently. In terms of why now, that is a great question. And you know, as a planner, I think in an ideal circumstance, we would wait. But in order to do authentic engagement and really good planning work, it is going to take a few years for us to do that. The level of discussion that is needed for our housing policy is going to be significant. Level of education to have that discussion is significant. It's going to take some time. And it's my opinion, based on the number of projects that are coming forward that can only work if they are allowed to have ground floor residential or greater flexibility. The number of projects that have stalled or that we are losing as a result of that, it is significant. I simply don't think we can wait. With what's happened in the last 12 months, I don't think we can afford to wait an additional 2 to 3 years. Not only is it the planning work, but then it's the implementation work as well. So you're right, in a perfect world, we would be waiting to have this comprehensive discussion. I don't believe that we can wait for that to happen. So this is, of all the planning work, to me, this is sort of that low-hanging fruit. We want to maybe pause on those density discussions within our neighborhoods, but there's a lot of good, sensible reasons, in my opinion, why it makes sense to move forward, at least in focus in our traditional business and our commercial zone districts. How will these impact 28th Street? I think there's two answers I have for that. One is it'll provide greater flexibility, namely higher density residential. If there's going to be opportunities for higher density residential, focusing them on our busier streets make a lot of sense to support transit, and also concentrating it where it makes sense from a scalability patterns of development. So this will provide that flexibility. The economic development director and I have also been having a more intentional an engagement. Him and I have been talking about a more intentional engagement strategy relative to making sure that we're creating an awareness about how these properties could be developed, and maybe looking at them as less of a blank slate, so that we're intentionally promoting the opportunities that are available within some of these larger parcels. So that's work that's ongoing. And the business district that was in opposition, that was John Ball area neighbors. They were, I think, if I could generally sum up their opposition. Their area-specific plan really focused on, I think, 2-story buildings, maybe 3 in certain circumstances. So they were opposed to the 4-story, the elimination of the bonus structure that would more easily allow 4-story building. They are also, they took a different approach, or maybe not a different approach. They took the approach of rezoning some of their, what I would call connector areas to residential to allow for residential, thereby trying to concentrate that core concept where they do want to see more commercial active uses. And I do greatly appreciate and respect the work that they've done, and I understand those recommendations. Again, there's a lot of things that have changed since 2012. And so I'm not sure that I would agree that all of the planning work that we've done in the past is still applicable with the changes that we've seen, both in our community need, but as well as the economics of the community, the market.
Thank you for that. And then so that actually leads me to a question that I forgot to ask that was on my sheet here. Why would we take away the bonuses to incentivize affordability and some of those other elements by allowing the 4th story, or the 4th story by right? Why would we remove the bonuses from that?
It's largely based on the past. We've had this in place since 2015, and I believe we've had 2 buildings that have been constructed to 4 stories. Not every, I mentioned in my presentation that not every developer is able to fit their development pro forma within those pricing models or those restrictions relative to affordable housing or mixed income housing. And so it's just increasingly challenging to actually build a 4-story building. And so if we can't get 4-story buildings because of those market conditions and those restrictions, then we're making it more difficult to bring on additional housing supply.
Thank you, Ms. Turkles. And I'll add 2 things, and then Commissioner O'Connor can weigh in. And I think that's an important point to note, and it ties into some of the recommendations that came out of the housing needs assessment that clearly shows that we need more housing at every price point, and that will help provide additional affordable housing, because you won't have this competition between people who can afford market rate and affordable housing. So just an increase in housing supply, and we need to think creatively about doing that since our city is largely built out. I think that very much ties into some of the recommendations that came out of the housing study. And then Commissioner, your question about other units. I know that, obviously the housing assessment was countywide. All of our surrounding cities and county partners and township partners have access to the study and the results of that study. I know some of them are, like Wyoming did an additional assessment of their housing needs. So I know that some surrounding cities are taking a close look at this as well. Ultimately, though, we all know this, it's a local jurisdiction decision. It's their authority to make those land use changes if they deem it appropriate for their community, but we're doing our best to make sure that we have as much of a united front as we can, recognizing that we need housing really all throughout our county, which again, the assessment was really clear about in the recommendations. Commissioner O'Connor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a little context to Commissioner Lanier's point about the bonus. Right now without main floor residential being able to use, if you have a project that costs $2 million and you want to be able to have accessible units, it means you have to put in an elevator. So if a $2 million project has a $200,000 elevator, you're adding 10% to the cost of the project. So by allowing main floor accessible units in a 3-story building, you can do it without an elevator then, which saves a significant amount of cost for that project, and hopefully offer those units at a lower cost.
That's a great point, Commissioner. And again, this is to set the public hearing. So Commissioner, I'm sure we'll continue to hear feedback from the community as we explore moving forward any of these changes. So Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Jones?
No, thanks so much for the presentation, Kristen. And I also appreciate Commissioner Lanier's question about the, the timing as it pertains to the master plan. And I also yet recognize the need to, I think, perhaps look at this through a lens of having a sense of urgency. I do think that it is wise and very timely that we open up opportunities for the first floor housing. And I think that anything that we can do to increase housing units is a good step forward. As the mayor has pointed out, there's a need for more housing units across the board. But we also know that, one of the most critical needs are, of course, affordable housing. And so I would just hope that we continue to push forward with this idea of mixed income housing and really continue to use every incentive that we have to be able to incentivize developers to consider creating mixed income housing communities because all the data points to those having the best outcomes in terms of educational outcomes, health outcomes, income outcomes, and such. So again, thank you for the presentation, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes to fruition.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, any final questions or comments? All right, I'll turn to our city clerk to call the vote.
Commissioner Lanier.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor.
Yes.
Commissioner Moody. Commissioner Isasi.
Yes.
Commissioner Repart.
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution approving the adjusted city water and sewer rates in accordance with the 2020 water sewer rate review. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, supported. So we have Ms. Carter here who will tell us about this item. I know we have this every year, so for those of us around this table, this will be a familiar presentation. So Ms. Carter, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The first item is the resolution approving the adjusted city water and sewer rates in accordance with that 2020 water sewer rate review. These rates were first introduced November 10th to commission, kicking off that 20-day public comment period, which expired on November 30th. No public comments were received during that time. The public comment period resulted in no adjustments to the overall 2020 rate study recommendations from the November 10th presentation. So that water system revenue requirement still reflects that system average 0.62% rate increase. And the sewer system requirements reflect the system average 7.92% rate increase still as well. That the expected overall water sewer quarterly increase for a typical Grand Rapids resident is still projected at that $6.32 per quarter. So the attached resolution includes those individual rates as well, and is submitted for adoption to be implemented January 1st, 2021.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Joel, will you go ahead and call the vote?
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor.
Yes.
Commissioner Moody.
Yes.
Commissioner Isasi.
Yes.
Commissioner Repart.
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier.
Aye.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution approving water and sewer rates in accordance with the 2020 water sewer rate review for the retail and wholesale partner communities of our city's water supply system and sanitary sewer system. Can I get a motion?
Support.
All right, moved and supported. And Ms. Carter, you can tell us about this one as well.
Thank you very much. The second item is the resolution approving the adjusted water and sewer rates for our retail and wholesale partner communities within the water and sewer system. The Utility Advisory Board partners and other customer communities were notified of the rate recommendation adjustments on November 6, 2020, which followed a 30-day partner comment community period, which expired on December 6. The Utility Advisory Board also recommended the approval of the rate adjustments on November 19th. No partner community comments were received and no individual meetings were requested with the rate study team. One partner community did contribute to an overall individual partner community rate buy down. However, the comment period resulted in no adjustments to the overall 2020 rate recommendations. So again, that water system revenue requirement reflects that system average 0.62% increase. And the sewer system requirement reflects the system average 7.92% increase. So the attached resolution approves the retail and wholesale partner communities recommended rates to be implemented January 1, 2021.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, City Clerk, can you call the vote?
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Isasi,
Yes.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, Commissioners, that will take us to the end of our action items this morning. We now have an update on our financial outlook for the city of Grand Rapids, and we'll have, I think I'll turn it to our city manager to open us up, and then we'll hear from our CFO, Miss Molly Claren.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor. I indicated earlier this summer that we would continue to monitor the effects of the pandemic and the economic recession and make adjustments as appropriate. And as some of you heard during the fiscal committee this morning, Ms. Claren has given an update of the various adjustments that we've made to revenue and expenditures through the budget amendments based on COVID relief funding. We think those are appropriate in light of the ongoing concern of the fiscal outlook. And what we will do today is ask our CFO to give us a high-level overview of what we can expect over the next couple of months. And I think we'll come back with even more certainty towards the end of January or early February. Ms. Claren?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. We wrote up, well, me and my team put together this memo in the hopes that it being a follow-up from when I last talked to you on October 30th of the state of our financial condition of the city. Problem is that picture really hasn't changed largely. There's still a lot of uncertainty that surrounds us, and as a result, we're still being strategic as, you know, for how we're going to handle, you know, the next 2 months going into building our fiscal year 22 budget, and you know, listening to where we can from market indicators or ideas of what to expect. So when I last met with you, we were seeing income tax trending around 9%. Our withholding was down 6%, and we had uncertainty across all of our local sectors. You know, I use the phrase, the situation remains fluid and uncertain. We're hoping for a stimulus package to come through at the federal level. However, I heard this morning that that $908 billion package may be split now in two, where they have $748 billion for less controversial items like schools and healthcare, and the remaining amount, the $160 billion, designated for local government. So I'm not sure. You know, I know Ms. Farrick is keeping a close eye on what's going on and how decisions at the federal level impact decisions made at our state legislature. So we'll continue to monitor that. For what's going on in Michigan, we know that we've recovered about 60% of the jobs lost during our spring lockdown. And again, our income tax receipts, even with a month and a half more of data, we're still trending between 8 and 9% loss. So, you know, withholding, again, consistent down at -6%. Although one thing we did dig out was of our top 100 employers who withhold, their receipts are down 26%. So that's reflective of this withholding issue, as well as perhaps revenue and income being down, and unemployment. So again, these numbers just reflect how people are currently behaving. Come January 1st, when people start filing individual returns, we might see an uptick in more residents, especially the non-residents, requesting refund. Our unemployment has improved. This month it's at 5.2%, which is up from 8%, 8.7% last month. We don't have a lockdown anymore on building and construction, so that's remained trying to build back. The things that we are, counting on is we could see up to a $10 million loss just because of this non-resident issue, as well as unemployment, since we can't tax on unemployment. I did make a list of things we are monitoring, just so you're aware, in the conversations you're having with other municipalities and in what you're seeing at the state level. In January, we'll have the next state revenue estimating conference. Compared to the May conference, in August, they came back and gave us a more positive picture. However, that was before the second wave of coronavirus. So this January meeting is going to be really pivotal, because the state shared revenue, to give you a scope, it's about 22 million we expect to get for our state. Also, I already commented on the federal level relief package. We'll keep our eye on what's going on there. The coronavirus vaccine, this has been good news. It's already being administered locally to some of our healthcare workers. But again, we need to see the pace at which this vaccine gets distributed locally before we can see for instance, the events we used to have downtown, which is a big revenue generator for the city. We've seen how parking has had to adjust due to that revenue loss, as well as some of our other areas. And then we also have the community stabilization plan to keep an eye on. This included extension of the Open Meetings Act, hopefully some kind of resolution for this local income tax issue, as well as resolving conflicts between Headley and Proposal A. So that's the bad news. On a more positive side, people are using their cars. We're seeing our Act 51, the gas and weight tax, we're actually doing better than our budget right now. So we're actually performing 10% higher. We did ratchet down this budget when we did formulate the fiscal year 21 budget, because we were just unsure of how long the lockdown would last, and if a second wave came, would people be out on the roads? But we're seeing that people are out on the roads because we're receiving that revenue. So we're currently trending about 2.3 million above our budget. So that's great news. And then going forward, we'll continue to, as we start building this fiscal year 22 budget, we'll continue to rely on our targets. We have healthy reserves, and we are already making cost-saving measures, which will help feed that fiscal year 22 budget. Again, the COVID relief legislation is going to be critical, and for our income tax, we are still really pushing hard on the compliance efforts. Our city was behind in compliance work, so that's really helped cushion those receipts. I do believe that those efforts are keeping us up at that 8 to 9% loss right now, instead of it being worse. For the year, we'll probably trend just for compliance around 7 million. As far as the relief money we've already received, we've been very strategic about how we utilize that in our city. And we still have some unrestricted balance to hold back in case we want to allocate that towards the income tax loss we expect to receive. And yeah, so a lot of uncertainty still surrounds us right now. I had hoped to give you a little bit more than what I can today, but again, we'll continue to monitor things and adjust accordingly as more things are known. But I do plan to return to you within 2 months and let you know how that, for instance, the state sharing revenue conference went, and see if we expect further reductions there. But I can't emphasize enough that our city is well positioned. We look at this recession and the impact on our neighbors, and again, I credit the decisions that were made during the last recession. Our city decided we never wanted to be in that position again, so we put policies in place to build reserves. So we have we are able to take more time to evaluate what's going on, and not have to make such dire cuts, because we can afford to, you know, a lot of the conferences that I've attended in the last 2 weeks have said, we know we're going to recover maybe sometime in late fiscal year 22, but we can't predict the next 6 months to a year. This is why we have reserves. We ended the year at about a little over 25% fund balance, and that's not including what we have in budget stabilization. So we are very fortunate in that way. Thank you.
Mayor, I'll just punctuate her remarks with, at least from my perspective, with the uncertainty around income taxes, we're still projecting up to a $10 million shortfall. What we've gotten from the state and federal relief funding right now gives us an added over $7 million to add to fund balance. So that will almost make a shortfall if there's no legislative fix. And so what we are recommending now is to continue to evaluate that and not spend beyond the current budget amendments that we brought forth at this meeting. So as things change, we will continue to evaluate, and if our ability to amend our budget is better, we'll bring those recommendations forward. I've heard excellent feedback from the rating agencies of how we've managed our finances through the pandemic, and we've not received a drop in our ratings. And so that is a credit to our fiscal staff, our comptroller, and our treasurer. I want to thank Ms. Claren for her work. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. I'll add my thanks to both you and Ms. Claren. I recognize, I think we all do, that this is a constantly evolving situation. I am hopeful that we're going to be able to have some successes either at the state level or federal level. We can't count on that until we know more. So appreciate the update today. We'll look forward to an update at the end of January or in February, so that we have some more certainty about what next year holds. And I just will add one request. Ms. Claren, maybe you can add in February when you come back to us. I am curious with the volatility in the stock market, the impact that that's had on our pension funds. So I wonder if, I can't recall when the next update will be from the actuarial, but I'll be interested to see what impact this past year has had on those funds as well, knowing that a year ago we were only about 82% funded in those funds. So just make sure that we include that in our conversation next year. All right, with that, any final thoughts or questions? I appreciate all of the information. I know all of us have been briefed multiple times and will continue to be kept abreast of the evolving and changing financial situation that we're in. All right, with that, I'll close that briefing. And commissioners, just a couple things as we finish up here. So tonight at our commission meeting, we do have a public hearing on an obsolete property rehabilitation district request for 730 Leonard. We do have public safety at 3 p.m. and then at 2 p.m. we have our executive session for our city manager review. So if I can call for a vote to go into executive session at 2 p.m.
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. City Clerk, will you call the question?
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Isasi,
Yes.
Dr. Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
He had to drop off.
Oh, okay. Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, commissioners, I'll see you at 2 p.m. You have a link for that executive session in your Outlook calendar. If you have any issues, just let me know. So I'll see you shortly. See you.